first thing we're gonna do is feed our starter because we're gonna need it. Let's make sourdough bread. Okay, so you don't have to get started quite as early as I did. We have theater club today, so I need to get this done, be done messing with it by 2 o'clock. So that's why I got mine started pretty early. It's been about 3 hours since I fed my starter. So it is about doubled in size. It's very nice and bubbly and ready to go. And we are going to add about 100 grams of active starter. Now, I do have a digital scale here, and it really does help. If you can weigh your ingredients, you're going to have better results. But you also can find recipes that use, measuring cups and measuring spoons. So I've done both, but today I'm going to use my scale, and I'm going for about 100 grams of starter, and that's going to be about half of a cup. Okay, now after you do that, just zero it out while you add ingredients. All right, the next thing we're gonna add is 375 grams of warm water. Now you don't want this hot, just warm. Okay, we're gonna just mix it with a fork now. Just get it nice and mixed up. And then we will add 500 grams of flour. Now, a lot of people say you need to use bread flour. I just use whatever flour I have on hand. I've used some wheat, but mostly I use King Arthur unbleached flour. So that's what I've got here. And I'm just gonna put that all in there. And that's right. Okay, so zero that out. And then we're gonna add, I'm not gonna weigh this salt. I'm just gonna add 2 teaspoons of salt. Now, I use sea salt, but you can use whatever salt you want. I think any salt would do, really. Okay, and now I'm just gonna mix it up. I'm gonna mix it until, I'm gonna move that scale. I'm gonna mix this until it forms just a really rough dough. So I have to have this done by lunch tomorrow. So I'm gonna cook it in the morning and have it done by lunch tomorrow. Tomorrow is Passover. And we aren't Jewish, but we do observe the biblical holidays. So that is one that we will observe and just remember Jesus as our final Passover lamb. We're going to take communion and have a special meal. It'll be a good time, which leads us into the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So after starting tomorrow night in the evening, there will be no more leavened bread for us. All right, so this is starting to come together. Just a rough dough. You can finish it with your hands if you need to, if your spoon's not really working for you, until it all comes together, and then we are just gonna let that rest. This part is called Autolyse. So what you do is you just cover it. I'm going to cover it with a damp towel. And you just leave it alone. You let it rest for 30 minutes. And what happens is just a bit of magic between between the flour and the water. It does its own thing. Okay, so it's been about 30 minutes. Now we are going to stretch and fold. All right, the dough is a little bit sticky, so I wet my hands before I do this part. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna imagine that the dough is a square, and we're gonna take up each side and stretch it and fold it over. And so it's kind of hard to work with, but then eventually it gets a little easier as you go. So, and then push over, now turn, pull up and stretch, fold it over. Fold it. And as you do this, the dough gets a little bit easier to work with. You'll see it change. Now I'm gonna do this every 30 minutes for about 2.5 hours. So that was 4 times. All right, we're just gonna cover it back up with a tea towel. So if you don't time this perfectly, it's okay. If you wait longer than 30 minutes and come stretch and fold, that's fine. If you come back sooner, like every 15 minutes, that's fine too. The dough is very forgiving. Time for bulk fermentation. So we're going to keep this covered. We're going to put it in a warm place for 6 to 8 hours, depending on how cold or warm it is in your house. If it is cold where you live, you can put this in the oven with the light on, and that should do the trick. But I'm going to put it in our laundry room because that's the warmest place in our house. So the goal is for the dough to increase in volume by about 50%, and you want some bubbles to form on the top. Also, the dough should jiggle a little bit whenever you move the bowl.
Can you make a bird on this on the back?
Yeah. Do you want to help me open the door, sir?
Yeah.
Open the door for me, please. Thank you very much.
And I'll close it when you're coming out.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Close it. It is the end of the day. It's been about 8 hours since we have left it for its bulk fermentation. So now we're gonna see how it's doing. Yeah, that looks good. So it's got a few bubbles on the top and it's a little bit jiggly. That's perfect. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna get the surface floured just a little bit, just lightly. We don't need a ton of flour here. So just lightly floured. Then I'm gonna scrape the dough out of the bowl with a bench scraper. Now, if you don't have a bench scraper, you're gonna need to get one for this. You could do it without a bench scraper, but it really, really helps. So I'm just gonna scrape it out of there. And now I'm gonna just form it into a circle. I'm gonna use my scraper to kind of help me tuck down and kind of slide at the same time. You wanna try to create some tension on the top layer. So just into a round circle. I don't want to overwork it at this point. We worked really hard to get all those bubbles in there. So I'm just gonna push and pull until you get a round ball. Okay, now I have a Benetton basket. If you don't have a Benetton basket, you can use a bowl or even a loaf pan would work. So I'm gonna lightly flour, or actually I'm gonna liberally flour this Benetton basket because I don't want the dough to stick. I have a liner for this basket. I don't like to use it. I don't know, just something about like soap on the liner. I don't know, I can smell the detergent on the liner when I wash it, so I don't really want to use my liner.
Look at this.
All right, it's pretty floured. I'm gonna leave a little extra flour in there. Yeah, pretty good. Okay. Now just gently pick up your dough and into the Benetton basket. Now I'm gonna cover this. I have beeswax paper that is so cute that my mom got me for Christmas last year, I believe it was. So I'm gonna go ahead and cover this up with the beeswax paper. You can use a shower cap or even a clean grocery sack. You could put the whole thing in and then just tie it up. That would work. I've done that before too. All right, so I'm just gonna cover that up. And then this is gonna go into the refrigerator overnight for about 24 hours. You can leave it in longer for 24 hours if you need to. Just whenever you're ready to bake it the next day, that's when you bake it. It's the next day. It's been about 27 hours and I'm ready to get my bread into the oven. My oven is almost done preheating. You preheat the oven to 550 degrees Fahrenheit. So what we're gonna do now, this is the moment of truth. Let's see if we can get the bread out of the Benetton basket without it sticking. Lately, it does stick a little bit and I just have to kind of coax it out, which it ends up doing fine. Let's see how it goes today. Yeah, it's gonna stick a little bit, but it's gonna be okay. Don't panic. If it sticks, just coax it out, you know? We put quite a bit of flour in here, so it shouldn't be too hard to get out. There it comes. Yeah. Okay, so I've put it down on a piece of parchment paper. You want to make sure that you put it on parchment, not on wax paper. It would not do good on wax paper. So I like to dust off a little bit of the flour because I did put a lot of flour into the Benetton basket so that it wouldn't stick too much. So I dust a little bit off. And now is the fun part. Now you get to score your bread. Oh, whoa. Did you see that? Okay, so you can do whatever pattern you want. You could look up patterns on Pinterest. There are so many options. I'm gonna go with something just a little simple. I usually do like a crescent shape over here, just straight down. Now, what I've found is that quicker motions go better when you're doing the scoring. So just like that. Little like leaf pattern over here. It can be whatever you want. Really, you could just do a big X and that would be fine too. It would look nice. The oven is finally done preheating, so I'm going to very carefully remove my Dutch oven. I don't know if I told you that. When you preheat your oven, you need to have a Dutch oven in the oven preheating as well. It's gonna be very, very hot. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna take the whole piece of parchment paper and I'm gonna stick it in the Dutch oven. Do this very carefully. This Dutch oven is extremely, extremely hot. Okay. Lid on. I'm gonna lower the temperature to 450 degrees. I'm gonna bake this for 30 minutes. 450. Let's get it back in the oven. Okay, I'm gonna set the timer for 30 minutes. The moment we've all been waiting for. All right, let's cut into it. I'm gonna suggest a super sharp knife. The one I'm using is not very good, but that's just what we have for today. Ta-da! Pretty good. All right, so I hope you guys like this video. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.